Hello, how you doing? My name is Waldo Smith. Uh, I sometimes read the news and do politics stuff. I am a very new, very bad political streamer. I'm not any good at it. But today is a big news day. Gonna read through the documents that just got dropped about Trump indictment, and then maybe some maybe some video games tonight. Uh, Making my way downtown. Well, last night was Halls of Torment, and it was very tormentuous. It tormented me. So maybe something fun like Vampire Survivor. I don't love the way Kick does the titles. Um, the Kick title.
Turn the friggin' frogs gay.
Thanks for following. I appreciate it. Uh, I just set that up. Actually, so here I just set that up yesterday, and I can play with it. I have very few bots because I barely understand what I'm doing and don't always know what's going on. Just getting started, just being an absolute noob to streaming stuff. So let's see, tonight probably going over the uh, Trump indictment, and then uh, yeah, Vampire Survivor. What was I talking about? Oh yeah, I was talking about the Kick titles. It keeps the title from the last one, and I can't change it until I start. So I forgot to remember and quit being a noob and remember to change the title after I've launched the stream. Uh, it doesn't copy. It doesn't do this, and even when I do remember, the Kick UI is kind of strange for changing the title. It doesn't always take. Have to try a few times. But anyway, let's get to the news. Uh, Here is the I know you're in there. Main screen, there we go. Then we turn on the window capture. Bam, we go to this right here, and we get to see all the fun stuff. So there it is. Ladies and gentlemen, Donald Trump has been indicted again. 4 crimes. What crimes specifically? He has been indicted for. Gosh, where's my thing here? Okay, we've got count number 1, conspiracy to defraud the United States. Count number 2, conspiracy to obstruct an official proceeding. That would be the election. Count number 3, obstruction of an attempt to obstruct an official proceeding. Obstruction of and attempt to obstruct an official proceeding. Goodness. And count number 4, this one I really like, conspiracy against rights. That's the very bottom. It's very short. It's very sweet. Straight to the point. What is this? Okay. Defendant Donald J. Trump, and he's the only person that's been indicted in this too. So this trial is going to come very soon, very quickly, because he is the only person they're indicting with this. There are 6 unnamed co-conspiracy people, and this one's going to come soon because it doesn't have the top secret documents the way that the other indictment is. The indictment for that's happening in Florida about the documents, that part is going to take until next June, so like 11 months from now, and it's going to take 11 months before they can get all the people chosen and all the lawyers can get security clearance because those boxes included things that are top secret. Mm, Outcome determinative. Don't know what you're talking about, boss. Let's see. Despite having lost, the defendant was determined to regain power. So, for more than 2 months following Election Day on November 3rd, 2020, the defendant spread lies that there had been outcome determinative fraud in the election and that he actually won. These claims were false. That's what you're talking about. You're ahead of me. And the defendant knew that they were false. They've they've got a whole bunch of stuff in the next few pages to talk about how he knew they were false. But the defendant repeated and widely disseminated them anyway to make his knowingly false claims appear legitimate, create an intense national atmosphere of mistrust and anger, and erode public faith in the administration of the election. The defendant had a right, like every American, to speak publicly about the election and even claim falsely that there had been an outcome determinative fraud during the election that he had won. Thanks for being here, Killer Mac. I appreciate it. He was also entitled to formally challenge the results of the election through lawful and appropriate means, such as by seeking recounts or audits of the popular vote in states or filing lawsuits challenging ballots and procedures. He is allowed to do that, and he did. Indeed, in many cases, the defendant did pursue these methods of contesting the electional results. His efforts to change the outcome in any state through recount audits or legal challenges were uniformly unsuccessful. So, what's going to happen? And it's already happening. I want to say Rudy Giuliani is already uh, on the news channels saying that Donald Trump is being uh, prosecuted for using his First Amendment speech, saying that it was a illegal election and a not a legitimate election is technically legal, but he has taken conspiratorial actions to make it true. Shortly after Election Day, the defendant also pursued unlawful means of discounting legitimate votes and subverting the election results. So, in doing so, the defendant perpetrated 3 criminal conspiracies. A conspiracy to defraud the United States by using dishonesty, fraud, and deceit to impair, obstruct, and defeat the lawful federal government function by which the results of the presidential election are collected, counted, and certified in federal government violation. So, this is when he sent those fake electors in. Uh, You feel comfortable like everyone else then? Like this is the end of the plot. I fear we are in the middle and something we aren't taking into account. Uh, Correct. This isn't over. Oh, this is years away from being over, but uh, we'll get to that part later too. A conspiracy to corruptly obstruct and impede the January 6th congressional proceeding at which the collected results of the presidential election are counted and certified, the certification proceeding, in violation 18, and a conspiracy against the right to vote and to have one's vote counted in violation. That is the part at the end that I really like. We'll get to that. Each of these conspiracies, which built on the widespread mistrust the defendant was creating through pervasive and destabilizing lies about election fraud, targeted a bedrock function of the United States federal government, the nation's process of collecting, counting, and certifying the results of a presidential election, the federal government function. Okay. Yeah, I think they got everything right in this document. That's why it took so long. Um, I think you're right. Uh, from on or about November 14th through on or about January 20th in the District of Columbia. Yeah, well, okay. Okay. Donald J. Trump did knowingly combine, conspire, confederate, and agree with co-conspirators, known and unknown, to the grand jury to defraud the United States by using dishonesty, fraud, and deceit to impair, obstruct, and defeat the lawful federal government function by which the results of the presidential election are collected, counted, and certified. So the purpose is to overturn the legitimate results. Why is my thing not highlighting anymore? Anyway, let's see. Co-conspirators are listed here. These guys, this is important, aren't being charged right now. We the internet has already figured out who they are. We know exactly who the 5 of them are. Let me see if I can find a photo of them over here on the Twitters. Uh, there they are. Rudy Giuliani, John Eastman, Sidney Powell, the Kraken Lady, Jeffrey Clark, Kenneth Cheese Bro, and a secret unnamed character to be released in an expansion pack later. We know who they are just by the way that this court document describes what they are doing and how they talked and what they've said. So we know who they are. They're not being charged right now. That's important. That's going to make this thing way quicker. Donald Trump's going to be in front of a judge on Thursday. This trial might happen within the next 2 or 3 months. It's going to happen quick. If they were charging all of these 6 people in this same document for the crimes, you then have to get those people, you have to arraign them, they all have to show up, they all push it back as far as they can, they all put their own bit of slow gum in the gears to slow this down, and it drags out a little bit. But they're not being charged in this, only Donald Trump. Skip over that. Skim. The defendant and co-conspirators used knowingly false claims of election fraud to get state legislators and election officials to subvert the legitimate election results and change electoral votes for the defendant's opponent. So yeah, this is the sending of fake electors to the Electoral College. Skim. I think this is all just the descriptions of it. Let's see. The defendant's vice president, who personally stood to gain by remaining in office as part of the defendant's ticket and whom he defended, asked to study fraud allegations, told the defendant that he had seen no evidence of outcome-determined fraud. Mike Pence told Donald Trump, I've seen no evidence of fraud. Donald Trump continued to talk about fraud. These are the trees that make up the forest. So I think the next 30 or 40 pages are just trees. Evidence. Here's a thing that a guy said telling him that he did not win. Let's see. The defendant widely disseminated his false claims of election fraud for months, despite the fact that he knew and in many cases had been informed directly that they were not true. The defendant knowingly false statements were integral to his criminal plans to defeat the federal government function, obstruct the certification, and interfere with others' rights to vote and have their votes counted. That's bad. I don't like that. He should not be doing those things. Let's see. The defendant claimed that there had been tens of thousands of double votes and other fraud in Nevada. The Nevada Secretary of State had previously rebutted the defendant's claim by publicly posting a fact versus myth document explaining that Nevada judges had reviewed and rejected them, that the Nevada Supreme Court had rendered the decision denying such claims. So, he keeps saying it. The officials and the judges in Nevada said, no, that's not correct, that's not true. He continued to push it because he's setting the groundwork for a criminal conspiracy. It's not double votes or dead voters, not immigrants or machines or hacks, not collecting counting process. It's none of those things he claimed. Right, he claimed a lot of things, and none of it was real or true. So he's creating this fake environment so that when he pushes in the next few, in a little bit, he's going to push for people to break the law. And they will feel like they could and should because of the groundwork he's laid already. That's a conspiracy. That's why they can hit him with that. Those things he avoided claiming? Yeah, possibly. Let's see. The defendant and co-conspirator, one, falsely asserted, among other things, that a substantial number of non-citizens, non-residents, and dead people had voted fraudulently in Arizona. The Arizona House Speaker asked co-conspirator 1 for evidence of the claims which co-conspirator 1 did not have but claimed he would provide. Co-conspirator 1 never did so. The defendant and co-conspirator 1 asked the Arizona House Speaker to call the legislature into session and hold a hearing based on the claims of election fraud. The Arizona House Speaker refused, stating that doing so would require a two-thirds vote of its members and he would not allow it without actual evidence of fraud. The defendant and co-conspirator 1 asked the Arizona House Speaker to use the legislature to circumvent the process by which legitimate electors would be ascertained for Biden based on popular vote, and replace those electors with new slate for the defendant. An Arizona House Speaker refused, responding that the suggestion was beyond anything he had ever heard and thought of something within his authority. The defendant and co-conspirator one asked the people to do government fraud. And if that Arizona House Speaker is going to sit on the stand and tell us that, he already has. I mean, that's why it's in this document. That Arizona House Speaker has spoken to them and said, yes, he asked me to defraud the government. For example, he said Dems mail-in was fraud, but his own GOP favorite absentee is just mailed in Dropbox. Yep, he built the optics. You're right. He's building optics that make his future plans more believable. Yeah, that's what's going on. Let's see. Arizona House Speaker issued a public statement and said, no election is perfect, and if there were evidence of illegal votes or an improper count, then Arizona law provides a process to contest the election, a lawsuit under state law. But the law does not authorize the legislature to reverse the results of an election. As a conservative Republican, I don't like the results of the presidential election. I voted for President Trump and worked hard to re-elect him. But I cannot and will not entertain a suggestion that we violate current law to change the outcome of a certified election. I and my fellow legislators swore an oath to support the U.S. Constitution and the Constitution and laws of the state of Arizona. It would violate that oath, the basic principles of Republican government, and the rule of law if we attempted to nullify the people's vote based on unsupported theories of fraud. Under the laws that we wrote and voted upon, Arizona voters chose who wins, and our system requires that choice be respected. Well put, Mr. House Speaker from Arizona. Our system requires that the choice be respected. I do follow a lot of the Q stuff. I just don't talk about it too much. Yeah, you got to keep your eyes on them, or they'll sneak up on you. Let's see. Let's see. On the morning of January 4th, co-conspirator 2 called the Arizona House Speaker to urge him to use a majority of the legislature to decertify the state's legitimate electors. Arizona's validity ascertained electors. Okay, sorry. Arizona's validly ascertained electors had voted 3 weeks earlier and sent the votes to Congress, which was scheduled to count those votes in Biden's favor in just 2 days' time at the January 6th certification proceeding. When the Arizona House Speaker explained that state investigations had uncovered no evidence of substantial fraud in the state, co-conspirator 2 conceded that he didn't know enough about the facts on the ground in Arizona, and nonetheless told the Arizona House Speaker to decertify and let the courts sort it out. The Arizona House Speaker refused, saying that he would not play with the oath he had taken to uphold the United States Constitution and Arizona. So, what are they saying here? They're saying that co-conspirator 2 called on the 4th and tried to pressure him into sending fake electors. That's a conspiracy to defraud the government. Let's see, what else we got? On November 16th, on the defendant's behalf, his executive assistant sent co-conspirator 3 and other documents containing bullet points critical of a certain voting machine company. Please include as is or almost as is in lawsuit. Huh. This is weird. Weird legal doc. It must go in all suits in GA and PA immediately with fraud claim that requires the entire election to be set aside. So this is them just creating frivolous lawsuits. And not only are they frivolous lawsuits, but they're fraudulent lawsuits. You can file lawsuits for lots of things. You can throw lawsuits at anybody for a lot of reasons. But if you know they're false, if you know they're fraudulent, if you know it's not true, then you're committing a crime called fraud. Yeah, you're right in chat about the Q stuff. They're very strange. We can cover that in a future thing too. Um, I sometimes keep my eye on them. Let's see. We've got. Uh, on December 3rd, co-conspirator 1 orchestrated a presentation to a judiciary subcommittee of the Georgia State Senate with the intention of misleading state senators into blocking the ascertainment of legitimate electors. Sorry. During the presentation, an agent of the defendant and the co-conspirator 1 falsely claimed that more than 10,000 dead people voted in Georgia. We did that part already. Dead people in Georgia, December 3rd. The defendant issued the thing. Okay. Wow, blockbuster testimony taking place right now in Georgia. Ballot stuffing by Dems when Republicans were forced to leave this large counting room. Plenty more coming, but this alone leads to an easy win of the state. False claims. They just make things up, and this is bad. Uh, the Georgia Secretary of State, Chief Operating Officer, debunked the claims that made co-conspirator one's presentation the previous day, issuing a tweet saying the 90-second video of election workers at State Farm Arena purporting to show fraud was watched in its entirety, hours, by the Georgia Secretary of State and investigators, shows normal ballot processing. Here is the fact check on it. December 7th, he reiterated during press conference that the claim that there had been misconduct in the State Farm Arena was false. More Georgia Attorney General stuff. These are all the trees. So, like I said, this is a tree. These are each one of these little things is another tree to make a forest, and that forest is the lawsuit. That is the indictment. Sorry, not lawsuit, but the indictment of Donald Trump. Some more talking about stuff. Attorney General, allegations of fraud. Justice Department and officials specifically refuted the defendant's claims about State Farm Marina, explaining to him that the activity shown in the tape co-conspirators was benign. I don't know what they're talking about there. In a phone call on December 27th, the defendant spoke with the acting attorney general and acting deputy attorney general. During the call, the defendant again pressed the unfounded claims regarding State Farm Marina, and the two top Justice Department officials again rebutted the allegations. They told him this wasn't true, literally to his face. Well, not to his face, on a phone call. They said it is not true, telling him that the Justice Department had reviewed videotape and interviewed witnesses and had not identified any suspicious conduct. He knows that he's lying. Uh, false election allegations. January 2nd, 4 days before Congress's certification proceeding, the defendant and others called Georgia's Secretary of State. During the call, the defendant lied to the Georgia Secretary of State to introduce him to Wow. During the call, the defendant, Donald Trump, lied to the Georgia Secretary of State to induce him to alter Georgia's popular vote count to call into question the validity of Biden's electors, which had been transmitted to Congress weeks before. Uh, I asked you, Ashley, what happens to the forest of indictments if Trump's in jail or barred from running and there's a sudden undeniable fraud that gets 2024 contested? What fraud would happen in 24? There's not going to be any fraud in 24. I mean, there will be fraud in every election that Republicans are in from now on because they're just going to scream about everything they didn't win as fraud. It'll go into the courts. They'll determine that it is or isn't, and then we'll move forward. If Ron DeSantis loses in 24 and then says it was fraud and then brings it up to the court and the court says, nah, it wasn't, there's no evidence, then we'll just do this again, I suppose. And then he can go get indicted if he puts together a conspiracy to defraud the government. All right. The defendant, Donald Trump, raised allegations regarding a State Farm Arena video. We talked about that. A professionally a professional vote scammer and hustler. Huh. In response to the Georgia Secretary of State refuted this. You're talking about the State Farm video, and I think it's extremely unfortunate that co-conspirator one or his people, they sliced and diced that video and took it out of context. Clip chimped it. Uh, when the Georgia Secretary of State then offered a link to the video that would disprove co-conspirator one's claims, the defendant responded, I don't care about a link. I don't need it. Georgia Secretary of State, I have a much better link. I don't know. The defendant, Donald Trump, asked about rumors that paper ballots cast in the election were being destroyed. And the Georgia Secretary of State's counsel explained to him that the claim had been investigated and was not true. They're telling him specifically, these things you're saying are not true. The next day, on January 3rd, the defendant falsely claimed that the Georgia Secretary of State had not addressed the defendant's allegations. He did by telling you they're not true, publicly stating that the Georgia Secretary of State was unwilling to or unable to answer questions such as the ballots under the table scam, ballot destruction, out of state voters, dead voters, and more. He has no clue. He told you it's not true. On January 6th, the defendant publicly repeated the knowingly false insinuation that more than 10,300 dead people voted in Georgia. On January 6th, he's lying to the public. Um, in chat, I believe I found a viable method of mass fraud, but Americans couldn't have done it, and it's happening in registration, no counts or collections. If you would humor me, I got this theory in a Substack, and would love for you to poke holes in it before I go on some big podcast this week. You can always shoot me a link, or shoot me a link to the, or put a link in the Discord. Hey, KBP, you want to put the Discord link in chat real quick? That'd be super. KBP's my chat mod. He's usually really cool. Let's see. On November 5th, 2020, the defendant claimed that there had been a suspicious dump of votes, purportedly illegitimate ballots, stating in Detroit that there were hours of unexplained delay in delivering many of the votes for counting. Final batch did not arrive until 4 in the morning, and even though the polls closed at 8 o'clock, so they brought it in, and batches came in, and nobody knew where they came from. I got to do it in Trump's voice. In Detroit, there were hours of unexplained delay in delivering many of the votes for counting. The final batch did not arrive until 4 in the morning, and even though the polls closed at 8 o'clock, so they brought it in, and the batches came in, and nobody knew where they came from. I don't do a good Trump voice, you know? Um, let's see, what is next? Sorry, I got distracted. Bring chat back up. All right, so the Senate and House oversight committees are actively engaged in a thorough review of Michigan's election process, and we have faith that the committee processes to provide greater transparency and accountability to our citizens. We have not yet been made aware of any information that would change the outcome of the election in Michigan and the legislative leaders. We will follow the law and follow the normal processes regarding Michigan's electors, just as we have said throughout this election. So they told him no. The things you are saying are not correct. Despite this, the next day the defendant made a knowingly false statement that in Michigan, at 6:31 in the morning, the vote dump of 149,000 votes came in unexpectedly. We were winning by a lot. The batch was received in horror. That batch was received in horror. Nobody knows anything about it. It's corrupt. Detroit is corrupt. I have a lot of friends in Detroit. They know it, but Detroit is totally corrupt. He's been told that it's not wrong. He says it's wrong. He says it's corrupt. He's building a conspiracy. Okay, scrolling down. Pennsylvania, same kind of thing, really. These are all the trees, 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 trees. The defendant's use of dishonesty, fraud, and deceit to organize fraudulent slates of electors and cause them to transmit false certificates to Congress. Now, I think this is amazing. The guy organized sending fake electors to the Electoral College. And they've got evidence to suggest that he knew about it and knew it was happening and knew that he was lying about it. Let's see. On November 18th, Memorandum Wisconsin memo advocated that because of the ongoing recount in Wisconsin, the defendants' electors there should meet and cast votes on December 14th, the date of the ECA required appointed electors to vote, to preserve the alternative of the defendants' Wisconsin elector slate in the event that the defendant ultimately prevailed in the state. So they're just setting up side votes. Fraudulent elector instructions. They're creating legal memos. And these, I think I showed the photo of them earlier, those people are lawyers. They know what they're doing is wrong. They know what they're doing is illegal because they are lawyers. Let's see. The plan began in early December, and ultimately the conspirators and the defendants' campaign took the Wisconsin memo and expanded it to any state that the defendant claimed was contested, even New Mexico, which the defendant had lost by more than 10% of the popular vote. Man, he was 10% down in New Mexico, and he tried to steal their votes. Uh, Donald Trump and the Republicans scream bloody murder all day long about how the votes were rigged, the votes were stolen, everything was crooked, everything was bad, yet they're the ones doing the vote stealing. Let's see. The next day, on December 8th, co-conspirator 5 called the Arizona attorney on co-conspirator 6's list. In an email after the call, the Arizona attorney recounted his conversation with number 5 as follows. I just talked to the gentleman who did that. Sorry, my headphones turn off if they don't have enough sound. Um, I just talked to that gentleman who did the memo. His idea is basically that all of us, Georgia, Wisconsin, Arizona, Pennsylvania, have our electors send in their votes, even though the votes aren't legal under federal law. Send in the votes, even though they're not legal, because they're not signed by the governor, so that members of Congress can fight about whether they should be counted. They could potentially argue that they're not bound by federal law because they're Congress and make the law. Kind of a wild creative. I'm happy to discuss this. My comment to him was that I guess there's no harm in it legally, at least, i.e., we would just be sending in fake electoral votes to Pence so that someone in Congress can make an objection when they start counting votes and start arguing that fake votes should be counted. That was the plan all along. Send in fake votes. The Republican Party, everybody. The party of fake votes. Uh, this is all just more trees for the indictment for us. More trees. More trees. The defendants attempt to leverage the Justice Department to use deceit to get state officials to replace legitimate electors and electoral votes with the defendants. So yeah, he tried to get the real electors tossed out and removed. The Justice Department had identified significant concerns that may have impacted the outcome of the election in multiple states. The Justice Department believed that Georgia and other states, two valid slates of electors, had gathered at the proper location on December 14th, and that both sets of ballots had been transmitted to Congress. That is, co-conspirator number 4's letter sought to advance the defendant's fraudulent elector plan by using the authority of the Justice Department to falsely present the fraudulent electors as a valid alternative. So he tried to have the Justice Department be the people who say that they're real. They just caught another far-right official in some voter machine scheme today, too. They're planting fraud to frame us. Yeah. I think, yeah, that happened. I haven't heard about that, but I'll look it up. I think Sidney Powell got in trouble for it like a couple of days ago. Let's see. More trees. The next morning, on January 3rd, despite having uncovered no additional evidence of election fraud, co-conspirator 4 sent to a Justice Department colleague an edited version of his draft letter to the states, which included a change from its previous claim to the Justice Department had concerns to a stronger false claim that as of today, the evidence of significant irregularities may have impacted the outcome of the election in multiple states. You got a link to the story? Yeah, send us a link. We'll check it out. Let's see. Also that afternoon, co-conspirator 4 met with acting attorney general and told him that the defendant had decided to put co-conspirator 4 in charge of the Justice Department. Hey, attorney general, I'm in charge of the Justice Department now. The acting attorney general responded that he would not accept being fired by a subordinate and immediately scheduled a meeting with the defendant for that evening. I'm in charge now. I'm your boss. Look at me. I'm justice now. Uh, let's see. This is all drama, high drama, big important drama. More trees. Yeah, see, lots and lots and lots of evidence. This isn't like nothing. They've got all of these things. I know I'm speeding past a lot of them, but a lot of them are. This isn't just Twitter drama. This is a person has what's the word when you talk to the court? Has said this to the court under oath. They've testified this is a true statement with their hand on a Bible to a judge testifying that this is true. These aren't just Twitter dramas. Um, on December 25th, when the vice president called the defendant to wish him a Merry Christmas, the defendant, Donald Trump, quickly turned the conversation to January 6th and his request for the vice president reject electoral votes that day. Motherfucker. So he knew on December 25th, Donald Trump knew on January 6th that he wanted the vice president to overturn this stuff. He knew it was fake. Everyone told him it was wrong. Everyone told him he was not allowed, but he still told him to go on anyway. Let's see. On January 1st, the defendant called the vice president and berated him because he had learned the vice president had opposed a lawsuit seeking a judicial decision that, at the certification, the vice president had the authority to reject or return votes to the states under the Constitution. The vice president responded that he thought there was no constitutional basis for such authority and that it was improper. In response, the defendant told the vice president, "You're too honest." Good stuff. "You're too honest," Donald Trump says to his vice president. Within hours of the conversation, the defendant reminded his supporters to meet in Washington before the certification proceeding, tweeting, "The big protest rally in Washington, D.C. will take place at 11 a.m. on January 6th. Location details to follow. Stop the steal." He knew it was happening. He's planning this. He's planning for what's happening on January 6th. He's planning it. He knew it was coming. Let's see. I think this is more trees. What about the PA votes? January 4th, January 5th. Stop the steal is a direct order. I could see that. So stop the steal. You stop it. Let's see. Are we on Jan 6th yet? No, we're still on January 5th. He knew it was coming. The same day, the defendant encouraged supporters to travel to Washington on January 6th, and he set the false expectation that the vice president had the authority to and might use the ceremonial role at the certification proceeding to reverse the election outcome in the defendant's favor, issuing the following tweets. At 11:06 a.m., the vice president has the power to reject fraudulent chosen electors. He has the power to reject fraudulently chosen electors. This was within 40 minutes of the defendant's earlier reminder to see you in D.C. Washington is being inundated with people who don't want to see an election victory stolen. Our country has had enough. They won't take it anymore. We hear you and love you from the Oval Office. Save America rally. Crowd begins to gather. Yeah, I agree. Stop the steal was projection. But that's what the P in GOP stands for. Gaslight, obstruct, project. GOP. At 1 a.m., the defendant used a tweet that falsely claimed if Vice President Mike Pence comes through for us, he will win the presidency. Many states want to decertify the mistake that they made in certifying incorrect and even fraudulent members in a process not approved by their state legislatures, which it must be. Mike can send it back. He knows that's a lie when he said it. Let's see. we go down all the things that happened on January 6th. After the defendant falsely claimed that the Pennsylvania legislature wanted to recertify their votes, they want to recertify, but the only way they can happen is if Mike Pence agrees to send it back. The ch- crowd began to chant, "Send it back," because he knows how to work a crowd, that guy. The defendant's exploitation of the violence and chaos at the Capitol. Uh, Shortly before 1, the vice president issued a public statement explaining that his role as the president of the Senate and the certification processing that was about to begin did not include unilaterally authority to determine which electoral votes should be counted and which should not. He's telling you that is not allowed to do it. Before the defendant had finished speaking, a crowd began to gather at the Capitol. Therefore, a mass of people, including individuals who had traveled to Washington and to the Capitol at the defendant's direction, broke through barriers, cordoning off the Capitol grounds, and advanced on the building, including by violently attacking law enforcement officers trying to secure it. The defendant, who returned to the White House after concluding his remarks, watched events at the Capitol unfold on the television in the dining room of the Oval Office, or next to the Oval Office. More than an hour of steady violent advancement, the crowd at the Capitol broke into the building. We know because we watched all the things that happened on Jan 6. Let's see. Skim. See if there's anything super important. We already kind of know exactly everything that happened there because obviously everybody watched the Jan 6 hearing last year. At 4:17, the defendant joined others in an outer Oval Office to watch the attack on the Capitol on television. The defendant said, "See, this is what happens when they try to steal an election. These people are angry. These people are really angry about it. This is what happens." Wasn't stolen. He knew it wasn't stolen. He'd been told multiple times, directly to his face, that it wasn't stolen. Defendant tweeted, "These are the things and events that happen when a sacred landslide election victory is so unceremoniously and viciously stripped away from great patriots who have been badly and unfairly treated for so long. Go home and with love and in peace, remember this day forever." I'm going to remember it forever, Mr. Defendant. Let's see. We got more. In one of the calls, co-conspirator 1 left a voicemail intended for the United States Senator that said, "We need you, our Republican friends, to try to just slow it down so we can get these legislatures to get more information to you. And I know they're reconvening at 8 tonight, but the only strategy we can follow is to object to numerous states and raise issues so that we get ourselves in tomorrow. Ideally, until the end of tomorrow." They wanted to slow down the government. Slow down. We don't like the result. Slow it down. I think Ted Cruz really helped out with that one, if I remember correctly. Um, they emailed a bunch of people. Okay, so that is all count one. That's the number one. Number two is much shorter. Count two, the allegations contained in the paragraphs, blah, 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 blah. Donald J. Trump did knowingly combine, conspire, confederate, and agree with co-conspirators, known and unknown to the grand jury, to corruptly obstruct and impede the official proceeding. That is the certification of the electoral vote. So this one I really like. This is count three. This is the important part, I think. That is an odd sentence. Ted Cruz helped. Ted Cruz helps lots of things. Ted Cruz helps me stay awake at night if I think about him too much. He helps creep me out. He helps me comprehend uh, non-Euclidean geometry. You know, when you look at him, you're like, "Oh, that can't work. How does that? How is he put together? That doesn't even make sense." Um, uh, so count three: obstruction of an attempt to obstruct an official proceeding. The allegations can skip. Donald Trump attempted to and did corruptly obstruct and impede an official proceeding in his certification of the electoral vote. That's not what I wanted. Count four. I'm a dork. Count four is the one I really like. Not three. Count four. Donald J. Trump did knowingly combine, conspire, confederate, and agree with co-conspirators to injure, oppress, threaten, and intimidate one or more persons in the free exercise and enjoyment of a right and a privilege secured to them by the Constitution and laws of the United States. That is the right to vote and have one's vote counted. Donald Trump, anti-constitutional. He is against the Constitution. And if anybody supports him, votes for him, or gives him money right now, they are aiding and abetting an anti-constitutional candidate, a person who does not care for the Constitution, someone who does not want the Constitution to be the basis of our laws. Donald Trump doesn't want the Constitution to be the way it is. He just wants it to be the way he wants it to be. He is anti-constitutional. He is anti-reality. He is un-American. Donald Trump, the un-American president. He doesn't want these things. He just wants his own power. He wants his own authority. He wants to be the person in charge, and whatever he says is constitutional. If Trump says the vice president gets to pick the electors, then that's the way it'll be. And his followers and his fans will accept that. They don't care. They don't mind. They love the idea that a leftist like me is getting upset about it. They love that. It's great. That's the point of politics for them, just to make me angry. That's what they want. Donald Trump, the criminal, is anti-constitutional. And that is the way it looks to me. Let's go to the very cool Twitter thing that's now called X. So stupid. I think we got so they're already talking trash on Fox News as usual. Nobody's surprised. So they're just going to say that this is an attack on his free speech, his First Amendment. They're going to say, "Oh, Donald Trump just said it wasn't a legal election. He said there was fraud, and you're prosecuting him for that." No, we're not prosecuting him for saying there's fraud. We're prosecuting him for doing the fraud. See if I can't.
Garland's prosecutors are bloodthirsty for Donald Trump. He was just indicted today on January 6th. How do you stomach that?
You know, I don't know how you can indict someone for claiming there was fraud in the election. Many on the left say, oh, well, there was no fraud because the court said so. Well, most
Garland's prosecutors are
Pause. He's not being indicted for saying that there is fraud. He's being indicted for doing fraud, which he did, and they have lots and lots and lots of evidence of him doing fraud. Yeah, you're right. He is. He's a threat to the Constitution, and he's backed by villains like Flynn, Stone, and Putin. It's true. I think there was one more good one where this guy, where's that bald guy that I hate? There he is. I really don't like this guy. This is good old, what is that guy's name? I've forgotten his name. But he's an actual Nazi. This is Miller. This is Miller. He's actually, literally, a white nationalist, white supremacist Nazi. But he gets to be on TV, so it's cool. And he's big friends with Trump.
Sean, this indictment is the legal equivalent of the French guillotine, the reign of terror. This is a mob mentality to take out Donald Trump. They are criminalizing free speech. They are criminalizing resistance to the deep state. They are criminalizing the...
Criminalizing resistance to the deep state? Wouldn't that just be the state? They're criminalizing crimes against the state. Wait a minute. Those sound like crimes.
questioning of an election result. They are criminalizing any resistance to Democrat officials in the states who violated election laws. They are criminalizing anyone who resists DOJ on any level, on any policy matter whatsoever. Free speech will not survive if this indictment succeeds.
They're criminalizing being against the DOJ, but the DOJ is the people who determine what's illegal. You have a case against the DOJ. I don't know. I don't like that guy. He is probably the worst. And so that's how The news is going. Oh, there's Rudy Giuliani. I think he was this. Let's watch that one. That's 29 seconds.
This one will be your legacy, violating the right of free speech of an American citizen. Never mind whether he was president or not. It could be anybody. It could be a homeless person. You don't get to violate people's First Amendment rights, Smith, no matter who the hell you are, or no matter how sick you are with Trump derangement syndrome. And this isn't the first time you've acted like an unethical lawyer. It should be the last. This one will be.
He's not being indicted for the things he said. He's being indicted for the conspiracy that he created. He created a conspiracy and a plan to violate the Electoral College, to send fake votes to the Electoral College. Smack the papers one more time, Babby. You're right. That's how we know it's serious. Good old Giuliani. And I think that's it for politics tonight. I just wanted to cover that. I wanted to do all those things. Oh, there's the Electoral College, just in case we need to talk about it. The Electoral College sends electors, people. The Electoral College is a group of presidential electors required by the Constitution to form every 4 years for the sole purpose of appointing the president and vice president. Each state and the District of Columbia appoints electors pursuant to the methods described in their legislature. And if you send electors that aren't described by their legislature, you've broken the law. You have changed things badly. You have broken the law. And that is the news for tonight. I just wanted to jump on real quick and do that. How about some super fun Vampire Survivors? One round of Vampire Survivors. Where is my Steam button? There it is. And if you're watching, feel free to throw any links into chat, any